Good afternoon, good morning, good midday to everyone, wherever you are in the world. My name is Claudia Kaiser from the Frankfurt Book Fair, and I would like to welcome you to our session today. And I'm really looking forward to it because it's going to be a chat with new and emerging creators from the Philippines. As you all know, the Philippines are the guest of honor of the 2025 Frankfurt Book Fair. And there is so much to discover. And I welcome you and wish you a lot of fun and interesting conversations in this session. I will now hand over to Julian Fuchs, who's going to moderate the session. Have fun.
Thank you so much, Claudia. Hello and welcome to our panel discussion, Neue Stimmen, New Voices, a chat with the Philippines' emerging creators. This is an event organized by the National Book Development Board of the Philippines and by Frankfurt Book Fair, and it's one of the many digital events leading up to the guest of honor participation of the Philippines at Frankfurt Book Fair this October. This session will also be recorded, so in case you have to leave early or in case you want to tell your family and friends, you also can re-watch it on the website of Frankfurt Book Fair. My name is Julian Fuchs. I'm the director of the Goethe Philippines, and I'm very much looking forward to this discussion. But before I introduce our 5 esteemed authors of the day, may I just pass the word on to Daniel Mariano from National Book Development Board for a short welcome address.
Hello, and good day to everyone. From the Philippines, it is our pride and honor to present to you our second digital session as we take the world stage as guest of honor for this year's Frankfurt Book Fair. This session will present 5 emerging authors from the Philippines and will give all of you guys an opportunity to learn more about our stories and culture and the poesis of a Filipino artist in our ever-changing world. On behalf of our Executive Director, Charisse Aquino Togade, welcome and mabuhay.
Thank you so much, Daniel. So we have roughly 1 hour time to get to know better these 5 amazing authors. It will be a guided discussion, so I'll be engaging in a discussion conversation with the 5 authors. But you all, our audience, are also invited to post your questions, your comments in the chat. I'll try to have a look at the chat and maybe also include some of the questions in my conversation. But there's also the team from National Book Development Board that will answer questions directly in case you want to know a title of a book or something like that. Please feel free to ask. Also, most of the, or even all of the authors will be present at Frankfurt Book Fair in October. So in case after this conversation you want to know more or you also want to meet them, having the book signed, look forward to October as well. I'll quickly introduce the 5 authors, and then of course we give them room to talk about their works and get to know them even more. A very warm welcome to Maria Rilke Arguelles, who is a poet and author of 2 poetry collections and is currently pursuing an art studies degree at the University of Philippines Diliman. A very warm welcome to Katrina Olan, who is a science fiction author, a Philippine comics and webtoon creator, and an associate creative director. She writes about robots, romance, and revenge, 3 R's. A warm welcome to Wilfredo Liangco, who is a medical oncologist and a writer. His predominantly non-fictional essays and stories have appeared in a multitude of magazines and also on his personal blog, wilfredoliangco.com. Warm welcome to Arli Pagaduan, who is a graphic novelist and a publisher of the short story collection Seedlings. And last but not least, a warm welcome to Angeli Dumatol, who is a young adult and contemporary romance author. She's also a nuclear medicine physician by profession. So a very warm welcome to our 5 authors. As you as the audience probably can already tell, we have a very diverse group of authors, all sort of united under this label of emerging authors. So maybe we will also explore a bit what this could mean. But first, let's try to get to know better these 5 amazing authors. And let's start with you, Angeli. Could you maybe share a bit with us your most recent work or something you wrote about, your genre, you're even welcome to read something from your books if you like. And if you have some book present, show it to the camera so that the audience can also already see it.
Okay, thank you so much, Julian. I have here a copy of. Wait, I'll just remove the background. I think the book is not showing well with the background.
It's showing partly, but yeah, it's probably better without the background.
Ah, oh, it's so hard. Wait, it has to be removed completely. There we go. Okay, there. Okay, this is a copy of my late. I can't say that it's the latest because I have actually one very later. We'll go into that later. My most the one that will have yet to be released, but it's coming very soon. This is my young adult novella called Heartstruck, which follows a popular high school girl called Alexa, who questions her decision to hide her passion for Filipino martial arts. We call it Arnis, or in some parts of the world, you may know it as Eskrima or Kali, but she hides her passion for that sport when she questions that decision when she reunites with her first love, Theo. Okay, this is my first book. I actually have a new YA book coming out here. So in various territories of the world, it's already available, but not all. So this is A Sky of a Thousand Colors from Penguin Southeast Asia. I guess we can call it a mystery YA novel. And this one, a visual arts prodigy named Jet suddenly goes missing, and his friends, Gwen and Jasper, have to find him using the memories of the past and the trail of unfinished paintings he has left in his wake. So something to look forward to.
Amazing,
And
Angeli.
yes, and
Maybe before you continue, I quickly asked colleagues from
yes,
National Book Development Board, maybe you can post the titles in the chat so the audience can already look it up if they want to know more. And please, if you have one more to present, present another
yes,
book.
this is just the last one because you mentioned something about my background as a doctor, so that kind of already touched upon my writing, even if I'm writing romance. So I was part of a medical romance anthology called The Doctor is in Love. My story here is called First Cut, which follows a pair of pre-residents fighting for the same residency slot. And somewhere along the way, they have to decide which is more important to them, that coveted residency slot or, their love for each other.
Oh, but we won't reveal the solution or the ending.
Yes, you have to read to find out.
Thank you so much, Angeli.
Thank you so much.
Arli, how about your works or your work? What would you like to present to us?
Okay, thank you. I'll remove my background for now. There we go. So I can show my book. So I'm Arli Pagaduan. I create life-giving stories through books, illustrations, words, paintings, and comics. So I'll show two books. So this one is I Like It Here in the Interim. So it's a collection of 20 short stories. And I'll quickly read the blurb so you get more of an idea what kind of stories there are here. So we meet a lot of people here. Welcome to the interim. So we meet a lot of people here. The king of parking spaces for people, artists who like physics, an old lady who writes a book every year. We see a lot of places here. A restaurant with just one table for all, a lighthouse for the loved and lost, somewhere the divine resides. We experience our humanity here, the brevity of life, the flight of dreams, the acceptance of every sunset. So the interim is the in-between. It is our life sitting both comfortably and dangerously on the short, thin thread that separates birth and death. It is where we learn, live, lose, and love. So there are 20 short stories and there are also 20 illustrations that correspond to the stories there. So this is self-published. I started with self-publishing and then it's only this 2025 that I got to work with a publisher, Comiket. So Comiket is the publisher of my first ever graphic novel or comic book, Cat Cafeteria. So it's about Kit and her mother who take care of community cats in their neighborhood. So they feed the cats and they also have them neutered or spayed and vaccinated. So all the cats are healthy and there. So it's a It's my first ever comic book, and comics is a great genre for me because I get to merge my two loves for writing and drawing. So that's it.
Amazing, Arli. Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much. Looking forward to reading your books. Wilfredo, what about you? Share a bit about your writing.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Liangco. No, I usually write no creative nonfiction pieces. No, I started seriously writing back in the Friendster era. So that was in the year 2002, 2003. So I started blogging there. That was the time when the term blogging meant writing, just writing essays or journal entries. No, it was a different definition at the time. So I would usually write about my experiences as a medical student, then as a resident, and then as a fellow, and then eventually as an attending physician. And then I realized later on that I had written so much that I could probably use this blog as a source document for a project, for a book. No, so that book event was even dogs with liver cancer and other medical misadventures. This was published by Mil Flores Publishing back in 2020, September 2022. So the stories here are creative nonfiction pieces about my experiences in the hospital setting, although the experiences are really more of interpersonal interaction or with my friends, with patients, no? Because I realized that most of the experiences in the hospital are like 50% hospital work and 50% like intrigue, no, slash paperwork, no, doing the scut work in the hospital. So it's not really about saving lives or anything grand, no. So those are the types of stories that I have decided to include in this collection.
Super interesting, Will. Thank you so much. How about you, Katrina? Share a bit about your writing.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name's Katrina F. Olan, and I'm the best-selling Filipino sci-fi author. So I do write, like what Julian said, about robots, romance, and revenge. Um, these are some of my current works and what I've recently published within the last 5 years. So the first is Tablay, which is our best-selling. It's the best-selling Filipino science fiction novel. It brings together the edge of futuristic fiction and the mysticism of Filipino folklore. So imagine robotic versions of our mythological creatures. There's so many in Philippine lore, like the Tikbalang, the Tik, the Kapre. And basically, it has themes of breaking generational curses and long war, because the mech pilot protagonist, Anya Valerio, has to stop the creation of this mega weapon called Bakunawa, which is also inspired by our Philippine mythology, before it's too late. It's an introspection on technology and ethics. What good is progress if it is made at the expense of our humanity? And history might have dictated the present, but the future is what we decided to be. So it started out as a novel, and then this year, and in time for the Frankfurt Book Fair, we're actually releasing Tablay, the graphic novel. So we converted it into a comic book, and you will be able to see it at the book fair. So it's cool because it's like Filipino manga in a sense, right? We were very inspired by anime, video games, and the mecha genre. And in parallel with that, another book that I have is Machina. So I prepare the backgrounds, Machina. So this is more of Filipino working class themes and cyberpunk. So for those familiar with the genre, it's really more of street culture, but mixed in also with Filipino life. So basically, everyday Filipino life merged with sci-fi and machinery. So that's Machina. So these are some of my works. Thank you so much.
Amazing, Katrina. Thank you so much. And last but not least, Rilke, tell us more about your writing.
Hi everyone, it's nice to have you here. Let me turn off my. Okay, so my name is Maria Rilke Arguelles. I write poetry mainly in Filipino and English, and my most recent works are my first two books, Pasalubong and Vidas. Pasalubong, my first book is written in Filipino. It's more of conventional poetry as I was just beginning to write literarily at that time. My second and more recent work, published last July 2024, Vidas, is a collection of poems written in the form of lists. So if you open the book, it's a mix of prose poetry and actual list of ordinary objects. And the project was mainly me trying to question in some ways what can we consider as poetry, if we consider mundane writings as poetry, and if we could distinguish them between what we normally see as literary or poems, or if we can. At the same time, the collection is situated or is premised upon my high school education, which is the Mount Makiling in Los Baños, Laguna, Philippines. And I've decided on that setting partly because it's an art school that was established during the 70s, which was an important time in our history. So in the poetry collection, aside from it being filled with poems, of course, it's also attempting to communicate with previous poets from my high school who wrote about the political climate back then in the 70s. And also, I guess that's my way of trying to find where I stand in our political climate now as a student back then. So I guess my poetry, since I'm the youngest of the bunch, is currently my way of figuring out where my biases lie and how I can further learn more about where about the spaces I occupy, while also building my identity and skills as a writer and as an artist. So yeah, that's me.
Amazing, Rilke. Thank you so much. And yeah, the Philippine High School for the Arts is actually a very prestigious school in Mount Makiling, which is one of the most serene places I've ever been to. So I imagine that it must be very inspirational for also writing poetry. Talking with you or learning more about your works, I'm of course always intrigued to know a bit more about the question, how did you get into writing? So like a bit to explore your origin stories. They must be very diverse because you have such diverse backgrounds. Maybe let's start with you, Rilke, now, because of course for a German audience, you carry the name of a very important poet. I'm not sure if this name was already given by your parents and they sort of put your fate into the cradle and said, our girl must be a poet. But how did you get into writing, or how into poetry?
Well, how did I get into writing? I would say I began, or like I was headed towards being a writer. Partly because I love reading. I grew up reading. My parents read to me a lot as a kid, and I carried that hobby, that pleasure, reading up until the present. And so when my parents, who are also very into the arts, my father is also a writer. So when they asked me if I wanted to study in Mount Makiling, I just said yes, because why not? And I guess that's also part of how I became a writer, because in my high school, we were asked to, aside from learning the general education like maths, English, Filipino, sciences, we were also tasked to pick a discipline that we were supposed to hone for 6 years. And what I chose back then was creative writing, partly because there's nothing else I know how to do. So I can't draw, I can't dance. I'm not very good at playing the instruments I know how to play. So it was kind of like an organic exposure to reading and writing made it also feel very natural for me to try what my parents were also doing. And then eventually I got into poetry, partly in response to the fact that my father is also a known poet in the Philippines. So back then, I was actually really, really intimidated by poetry. And the people that we knew in our lives also always kept telling me that I had big shoes to fill, or there's a lot of pressure that I should respond to, and like they keep asking me, what if you're not as good as a writer as your father and all that stuff? And it was just getting to me. I was feeling annoyed. So I thought I'm going to try to make a collection of poetry. And if it flops, then it flops. And luckily it didn't. And I found genuine pleasure in doing it. So here I am.
That's amazing. And what
It's a
did
very
your
intimate,
parents, what did your parents say? Did you get the blessing?
yeah, I think I did. I'm actually really hesitant in accepting compliments from my family because there's always that doubt in my head if they're just complimenting me because I'm their daughter, or are they complimenting me because I'm genuinely like good at what I do. But I think I've got their blessings. Yeah, and it's also I think one of the things I like most about becoming a writer or becoming someone who's studying literature and doing literature is the fact that I have now a lot more things to talk about to my parents that back then when I was a kid I couldn't really understand, and so it's more of a bonding thing now. It got to the extent that we've started a small press in the Philippines, Grana Books. Its first book published actually was my first book. But since we started that small press, now I also work for them as their book designer, and I've also begun translating. So you can just imagine that within our intimate spaces at home, aside from the usual mother, daughter, father, sibling relationships we have, there's also this constant exchange of ideas about what how we approach our craft, how we relate or see other artists and all that. It's really nice.
Sounds amazing, Rilke. Thank you so much for sharing this. How about you, Katrina? You already mentioned your fascination with Philippine mythological world. Was that sort of the spike to get you into writing, or tell us a bit more how you got into the writing field?
Yes. So by day, I'm also a writer. That's my day job. But I work in advertising. So I do copywriting. So I write scripts for commercials and radio and TV. But I started writing when I was very young. I had this passion for it, mostly because a lot of my family were into the arts. I do have family members that are also theater directors and ballet conservatory people and maestros. So it was in the genes, but also I did have a lot of family members who are into the sciences. So we have astrophysicists, amazing, right? Engineers. My parents are both doctors. So they were like, why aren't you a doctor? You know, it's that typical Asian kid whose parents are doctors and they're expecting you to be a doctor. But no, I wanted to get into the creative field. I just feel there's a lot more opportunity. So I feel like the most natural state for me is to blend the two worlds that I do know. I started out by writing on little sheets of paper, sometimes prescription pads, even doctor's prescription pads, stapling them together and making my first ever books or zines. But I was looking through my old files. I found all of my childhood drawings and writing, and a lot of it was science fiction. Like I would design machines. I would make ads for like hovercrafts. It was so interesting. Just look at that. So it's really my bread and butter. I actually started when I entered the comics community. Actually, I started off as a novelist. My first few novels were science fiction. When I entered the comics community, I realized that there were a lot of writers that wrote about being Filipino. And my first book ever, which I'm not bringing to the Frankfurt Book Fair, but my first ever published book, the characters were still very Western, right? Like, because we grew up with Disney, Nickelodeon, right? Anime. But when I found out that there was this whole community of people that just loved being Filipino and writing about Filipino things, it challenged me to like, why don't I lean into my own culture and create something that I'm proud of, right? But it's not only that. I asked myself, and as the marketer in me, what is something that hasn't really been done before? And that is science fiction. So because if you think about Filipino and science fiction, there's some sort of incongruency, right? You're just like, these things don't really match up. And so I thought the space that I could really own and lead is Filipino science fiction. So that's when I combined Filipino culture, which is mythology, and science fiction. I love robots. I love Gundam, Evangelion, all of these Japanese super robots. We bring them together, and that's how I created my best-selling series, Tablay. Yes, and also Machina. They're also Filipino and science fiction. That's it. Thank you so much.
Amazing, Katrina. Thank you. Yeah, there was a question from the audience that we sort of already answered about the languages of you as authors, but of course that's also a very interesting question because there are so many different languages in the Philippines. Katrina, I believe you write in English, right?
Yes, I write in English, but I do like sometimes putting a bit of Filipino in the words, but it's easy to understand through context. But in some of my books, the most important lines are sometimes posed as rhetorical questions are in simple Filipino. I think it's also a beautiful way to introduce the language and get people interested to just actually ask, or the first step, what does this line mean, right? So even this whole intention of writing in English, but putting a lot of Filipino elements, it has become a door for people to really enter into this whole new realm of Filipino culture. So, yes.
Thank you. And maybe for the German audience that might be not aware of it, English is also an official language in the Philippines and probably the main educational language, having been a American colony. So that's, I think, an important information as well. Will, you already mentioned as a oncologist that you sort of used writing also to talk a bit more about the situations at hospitals and so on. But yeah, tell us a bit more. How did you get into writing? Is it also something that to blow off steam, or yeah, to have to do something else than just the medical world work?
Yeah, actually, I think it was something that I always knew, no, that I had a skill for. But I think one of the uh, turning point was when I was in college. No, I took up a pre-med course. No, so mostly sciences, hard sciences, and all that. But as I was walking along the faculty center of UP Diliman, and I met a lot of the writers there and the college students taking up creative writing courses. I thought that, you know what, this is what I really want to do, no? And someday I wish I could be part of their world, no? Like Ariel the mermaid. But I had to finish my career, no, and then my training, and then um complete the residency and fellowship and all that, no. So I sort of forgot all about it. And then it was actually during COVID, no, when ironically I had sort of the time to really sit on it, no, and then think about all the earlier works that I've done, no, and then just able to put everything together, no, and then finalize this book. So you're right, no? And then during the COVID time, that was really one of the ways, no, by which I was able to blow up steam, and not just me, no, but also all the other physicians, to the point that Bienvenido and Santos Creative Writing Center of LaSalle, no, had their first pathography or the creative nonfiction workshop for doctors. No, that was the when it first happened. No? So it sort of served as um a way, for doctors to share their experiences, not necessarily as a group therapy, but for everyone, just to share how they're feeling, just to share their own personal experiences, especially in the setting of isolation, no? Since at that time everybody was isolated and not being able to interact with a lot of people. So currently, now that things are back to normal, no, I still try to get back into it, no, write my experiences as a medical oncologist, no, and I think the goal really is for me to do it regularly.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. We talk more about your position or your perspective on the field, because I'm very interested in that as well. But maybe let's continue first with Arli. And you already mentioned you are doing both writing and designing, or how did you get into it?
Oh, okay. For me, I think it started when I was a kid. So I love to read books. So whether those are picture books or novels or short stories or poems, it really started with reading. So the authors I read before paved the way for me or showed me that, hey, you can also write a book someday. So and then I started writing more when I was in elementary school when I joined our school paper. So we would join summer journalism classes. So ever since elementary school, high school, and college, I've been part of the school paper. So I write news mostly or features. And then in college, I also tried to write fictional stories. So very short stories and back in 2017, I realized that I've written a lot of them already on my Tumblr. If you're familiar with Tumblr, it's a micro blogging site that was popular around 2009 to 2013 maybe. So I had a lot of short stories there, and I decided, hey, why not make a short collection and self-publish it, and let's see if people are gonna read my stories. So that was one way for me to test the waters if people are going to resonate with what I wrote. So there, it started with self-publishing, and then I also so when I made that short story collection, I also drew corresponding illustrations. So every book that I've released, the self-published ones all have illustrations since I really love drawing and writing because as a shy kid, that was my way of communication. And that was the best way I could express myself. So I'm not really good at speaking before or in other fields. So it's really writing and drawing. So there, that's it for me. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Arli. And how about you, Angeli? How did you get into writing?
Similar to Arli, I started out as a very avid reader when I was young. So my parents like to tell the story of how when I was in elementary school, I'd run out of things to read at home. And because of that necessity to like get more books, I started writing some of my own. And going into why I got into writing romance novels, simply put, it's because it's the genre I enjoy reading the most. So I naturally gravitated towards writing romance. So it's great to be kilig. So to share a bit of Filipino vocabulary with all of you, kilig is that kind of exhilarating feeling associated with falling in love. So masaya kiligin. It's great to be kilig. On a more serious note, I like that romance actually not only promises but delivers on something I think we all want out of life, which is, a happy ending. It doesn't matter what kind of trials, conflicts, difficulties you face and go through. At the end, you will go through all of them successfully and find happiness at the end of the road. So reading stories that deliver that kind of message, that kind of hope, felt so uplifting for me. So I wanted to share that feeling to my readers. So that's why I continue writing romance nowadays. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, Angeli. Yeah, you really all have very diverse background. I mean, some of the way you got into writing show similarities, right? A lot of you were avid readers. But looking at, still you bring very diverse backgrounds with you and probably very unique perspectives on Filipino society. Just again, for our German audience that might not be too familiar with the Philippines, we're talking about a country of probably more than 7,000 islands, 115 million people, 180 different languages, a lot of different ethnic groups, a colonial history that includes the Spanish, the Americans, the Japanese, and a lot of challenges, of course, that countries in the region face, plus environmental challenges. And I'd be interested, you all bring very unique perspectives at the Filipino society, but we also united you tonight as sort of the 5 emerging authors from the Philippines, which might also be already a label, right? Do you have a very young perspective? Do you bring something to the table that maybe the other more the older generation of authors haven't really brought to the discussion. So I'd be, just as an open question, I'm not sure who would like to respond to this. So what is your take or your perspective on, say, the Filipino society when you write? You can just show hands and then we start. Otherwise, I'll call on one on you, or on one of you.
Right, I can
Then I
start.
might pick Rilke because. Okay, then you
Okay.
start, Katrina. Perfect.
Yeah, I feel like, especially for my genre, science fiction, it has the ability to talk a lot about current events, but it's beautifully packaged as a futuristic, right? As a futuristic thing. I mean, you've seen the way that they've done it with Star Wars, right? Or you've seen the way that they've done it with other science fiction stuff where they talk about current events in the country, but it's in the future, right? You see robots, flying cars, whatnot. The opportunity that I took was also to show the different strengths and ills of Filipino society when it came to writing my books like Tablay or Makina. Specifically for, let's say, Makina, it delves into a lot of the working class themes and hypercapitalism. So for the working class themes, especially in the Philippines, since we are a global South nation, right? We're still getting there in terms of economy, which creates a very rich playground for writing the genre of science fiction. I've always told people that Filipino science fiction is high-tech, low-life, meaning there's so much opportunity, but there's a large social and political divide. Especially as the Filipino people, there's a large gap between the haves and have-nots. So there are certain stories that talk about this, especially in Makina, which is a anthology. So there are 52 stories with robotic illustrations, futuristic illustrations. You see the struggles of the blue collar workers. For example, delivery riders, which is a big thing in the Philippines, right? Especially in Metro Manila, where delivery riders have to deliver parcels, but the twist in Makina is they have to go through in uninhabitable landscapes, like toxic wastelands and stuff filled with monsters and robots just to make the delivery. But that's the truth about
depends on the exhaust fumes in Manila, right? No,
yeah,
I'm just kidding.
exactly. So it's a representation of what's currently happening, right? But it's packaged in a way that it seems futuristic. Or like in Tablay, where you see that their society is divided into a lot of political colors. And the truth is, especially with the current political milieu in the Philippines, we do see that kind of polarization, right? And with that, we realize that our whole society, although we are like 7,100 islands, but these sorts of ideologies always fight each other, right? But at the same time, the stories talk about how community-led Filipinos are, right? I mean, it's so, especially Asian societies, which are really banked on family, friendships. We have special name for group of friends, which we call barkada. We even have this concept that we call kapwa, right? Kapwa is saying that I don't know you, but I know that we are part of this bigger system of things and we have to help each other, which is very different from like an American society, which is like all about individualism, right? And I don't owe you anything, but there's this sense of utang na loob. So there's a lot of othership, meaning I recognize you as part of my extended family, kind of patchwork family, right? So these are the themes that can be explored in our not only my books, but a lot of our Filipino books. Thank you.
Very interesting. Maybe passing it on to Angeli, because sometimes Roman literature sort of has this critical label of being sort of leading into escapism, right? Thinking about these nice love stories, but maybe putting the daily challenges aside. Would you agree with this assessment?
I think I can't deny that writing romance, sometimes feels like some sort of rebellion. When you're living in such trying times, in a country like the Philippines, which has a lot of like current conflicts and issues. But I think that reality makes those kinds of stories all the more needed and essential, because what will keep you going in such trying times, in a world that's full of conflict and full of issues? It's hope, and that's what romance stories bring to the table. You know, that no matter what kind of conflict you face, a happy ending is possible. And not only possible, there's justice to having it uh at the end of your story. And that's personally what I believe.
Amazing, thank you. And yeah, Rilke, you already started talking a bit about the political power of poetry, and maybe also let's expand a bit on your position as a poet, your view, your regard of society. What can you share with us?
Well, I guess, I can pick where to start. I suppose I can start with saying that, while I do enjoy writing poetry, and I've said that my work attempted to communicate with other works who are commenting on our political climate from the past and in the present, I suppose it's also worth saying that poetry in the general matter of things is a very small thing. It can't save lives, it can't solve problems local and global, but at the same time, I think what I aim to do with my work and my craft and my poetry is to hopefully have it converse with other writers, and whose perspectives also contribute to how we as people and as readers make sense of the problems that surround us. For example, in my book, I think the main work that my work was trying to converse with was my fellow alumni's thesis project, which was also published as a collection of poetry. It's a work by Kirima Lorena Tariman, a Filipino poet revolutionary who also graduated from PHSA, and who passed away some years back. And I think with my position as a 20-year-old student writer who's still figuring things out in the Philippines, my poetry can't really give a lot of deep insight or really solid opinions yet, partly because I'm still, as a person, very young and very naive perhaps, and there's still a lot of things that I need to experience and know more about the world. However, what my work hopes to do is to also like bring forward other literature that hopefully I can converse with from my point of view and help it like bring forward again or make it relevant again in the present time. Because mostly my works, I think, or my target audience with my poetry are people my age. Because I think poetry in the Philippines have such very, like, the standards of poetry in the Philippines are very varied, in the sense that you have poets who value more traditional forms, while other poets value more experimental forms, and there's many instances where their opinions clash. And so with my work, I try to point it towards people my age who are only starting to read poetry or write poetry, so that perhaps like many poems do, my work can incite in them this enthusiasm or curiosity to also consult other pieces of literature, and with that form their own opinion about the spaces they inhabit. So I guess in terms of writing about political climate or local problems, my work as a writer, I see it currently as being one of the many like pins where you can stand from and view things from one side, and then hopefully that pin can also connect you to other pins who can help shape what you think of about this certain issue, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. Very nice. Thank you, Rilke. Will, you mentioned, or you have this, you're a doctor and probably also saving life, unlike poems. But you write, and I'd be interested to know what kind of perspective, or what would you like to talk about through your writings? You said it's non-fictional. Is it more, is it uplifting perspectives of the hospital? Is it sort of a social critique? Tell us a bit more about this.
Yeah. All right. So I think most of the stories or books, no, about hospitals, especially in third world countries, are about tragedies. No, parang they usually tell us about stories of like death and poverty, and the difficulties that our patients face. Because of corruption and all that. But I've been working in a hospital in hospitals for almost 20 years. And before I used to work in a government hospital and now in a private hospital. And then I saw that it's not all about tragedy. A lot of stories are also very funny. A lot of stories are sexy. A lot of stories are inconsequential. They don't really matter in the greater scheme of things. But I think that they also deserve to be told that they still have a space in the literary world. So those are the stories that I chose to include. And I think this will sort of give readers a better perspective on our healthcare workers, our patients, that they are not defined by their jobs, they are not defined by their disease. I included some stories of my patients, who have other things to do. They're not just patients. They don't. It's not their full-time job to come to the hospital and undergo chemotherapy. They have their relationships. They have their hobbies. They have their problems apart from their current condition. So these are the stories that I opted to tell.
Beautiful, thanks, Will. And Arli, how about you? Your position as well, a designer or a writer, and also a painter or a designer. Position do you take, or what kind of stories do you like to tell? What kind of angles?
For me, they're really stories that are life-giving. So when I say life-giving, I also mean that I don't shy away from darkness or other social political issues or grief or loss and other mental health issues, but somehow I want to show that through my stories there's hope, and that people can actually change for the better. We can imagine a better world together. Like for example, with Cat Cafeteria, my first comic book, it's about two ordinary people wanting to change how, or wanting to create a safer place for their community cats. And also they learn to ask help from other people in their neighborhood, in their community. So I hope that through Cat Cafeteria, since I'm trying to shed light on animal welfare, on responsible pet ownership, on eradication of rabies, on community cleanliness and all those things, I want to somehow help move the needle towards a more compassionate Philippines when we're talking about stray or community animals, like community dogs and community cats. So I wrote Cat Cafeteria in the hopes that when people read it, they're somehow inspired to adopt or foster community cats, whether they're from shelters or from local groups or solo rescuers, so that we could at least help find homes for these loving community cats. So there, somehow I want it to be hopeful and inspiring for others. Thank you.
Very nice. Thanks, Arli. Yeah, maybe this connection or this relationship with your readership. I mean, I assume one of the challenges as a writer, in contrast to, say, an artist that is more in performance and get a direct resonance from his audience, is that you sometimes don't know that much about your readership, and maybe you have these I know that Rilke said earlier she's writing for the other 20 years olds. Now, Arli, you said you're trying to reach an audience and try to inspire love for the neighborhood cats. What do you, or how important is this connection with the readership for you? And do you maybe also engage with the readership? Will, for instance, you said you write a blog, and probably there's quite also a discourse with the readership, right?
Yeah.
So you get a lot of, so for you, it's probably more of a dialogue that you lead with the readers.
Yeah, that's true. No, I think that's very important, no, for there to be a dialogue, no, and not it just be a one-way street. No? So I think that's very important, and that is, I think, the beauty of the blog format at that time, no, where you can get feedback from the readers as well.
How about you, Katrina? Do you know who reads your books, and do you sometimes also exchange with them?
Of course. Actually, that's my favorite. I think for all us authors, our most favorite part is actually interacting with the readers. Like, I get so surprised that people who are like thousands of miles away would slide into my DMs on Instagram, on Facebook, and they would just like thank me for things that I never thought would be possible. Like, I remember I have two stories. The first one is a grade school, an elementary student. I visited my alma mater, where I grew up and studied elementary. And then she was like, "Are you on?" Right? So I'm like, "Yes." Oh my goodness. And then she was screaming, and then she asked me to sign her hand. And she was like, "Did you know," she, in this very childish voice, "did you know that my sister, she just wanted to say thank you because your books help her get through a very dark time in her life." So I was like, I was really shocked, but I was really like touched that um people were able to be moved enough to like, I think it was the pandemic. Yes, it was the pandemic. Like, I think it helped her get through the pandemic. There are other times, because me, I'm a very hands-on author, because I also run the social media, all of our Facebook pages, our Instagrams. I used it during the pandemic to really boost the readership for the book. Interacting with bookstagrammers, diba? I would make the cold calls. I would see fan arts, people drawing the robots, and then of
Nice.
course I would post them. But I think one of the most important things that I learned is feedback, which is great because although there are some people, they're just haters, right? They will leave a 2-star review and never really explain why they gave you 2 stars on Goodreads. And then suddenly there are people who would our average is 4 stars. Of course, we can't make everyone happy. Our books are an average of 4 stars. The people would give feedback. Like, I would, like I said, as the advertiser, as the marketer, I would go through social media. I would read the public sentiments about the book. And then for the graphic novel adaptation, I took in all of their critique and remastered the narrative for the graphic novel.
That's
For example,
wonderful.
yeah, so it's really like storytelling around the campfire. This is what we loved about the book. It's also like business. You figure out which parts of your business you need to improve so that you connect with your target market better. So listening to the critique of the readers, like, I wish this part was longer, or I didn't like how the villain did this, or the hero was a bit too Mary Sue. So, right, the term of Mary Sue, where it's the predictable character who's too perfect. So I said, okay, for the graphic novel, we make the main character less perfect. We add more flaws. The readers said they wanted to see more of this side character. Okay, we'll give the side character more scenes in the graphic novel. They love the action. Okay, we'll add more pages where there's action, and it's a graphic novel now, so we can show all the robots fighting. So it's a proactive way to also show the people and pay it forward that I actually listen to you and I want to become better because this is what the readers say. So yeah, that's how my life evolved throughout the years.
Amazing, Katrina. I would just want to ask, Angeli, do you sometimes get special romance requests from your readership? Both special and no.
Oh, interesting story about our medical romance anthology. A Doctor is in Love. It was actually formed when I have to mention that I am part of a romance community here in the Philippines. So it's called Romance Class. I think some of my fellow authors are in the audience. Hi, guys. So anyway, we're a Romance Class is a community of Filipino writers, but also readers and other creatives who enjoy romance in general. So anyway, within our community, we found out that we were actually 4 doctor writers within the community. So everyone was like, when are we getting some medical romance stories? So eventually we came up with the anthology, although it took like 5 years because of our very busy schedules. But the important thing is it's out there. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, and we are already approaching the end of this 1 hour, but maybe I can quickly get 2 more insights from Rilke and Arli. Rilke, you mentioned you're writing your poems for your fellow 20-year-olds. How about, are you in contact with them? Are you reaching them? How's the dialogue with them?
I did say that. However, I think in general for my poetry, there's not as constant a surge of feedback is compared to the other writers. I think one of the reasons is because it's published by a very small press. So the only opportunities we get to disseminate the books is during fairs, local fairs, and even then the sales are not always guaranteed. And then on the other hand, also, I haven't seen a lot of people write reviews of my works, even if they do move when we sell them. So for the most part, I'm not really sure if people my age are reading it. But on the other hand, the reviews that I have received show that people from other age groups also read and happen to enjoy my works. And I guess from those reviews that I've received, it's always a pleasure to see what parts of my work connected with them. And it also energizes me even more to write, because it just shows that not only does my work for them succeeds in having conversations with other works they've read, but it also manages to have a conversation with them, even if they're coming from a random 20-year-old from Quezon City. So it always makes me enchanted in a sense how poetry, even if you angle it towards a certain demographic, manage to slither out of that, trajectory you put it in, and finds its way to perhaps the audience that it actually needs. I suppose it would also be nice to bring up and connect this kind of idea to the title of my first book, which in Filipino is titled Pasalubong. Pasalubong in our country is like presents that you buy from your travels and you bring it home to your loved ones, to your family and friends. So it's souvenirs, basically. And coming from that idea of poems being souvenirs, it's really nice in the sense that there's this idea that in the Philippines, very people enjoy poetry. And I think the fact that my work and the work of other poets in the Philippines managed to find their ideal readers in its own way, outside of, advertisements and marketing strategies, it shows that people still in the Philippines still read poetry. It's just a matter of finding enough ways to get these books out in the public and making it accessible enough for them, and trusting that your readers can and will understand whatever you put out there.
Thank you so much. And of course, we are hoping to expand your readership even more by this panel discussion today. Unfortunately, we are approaching, or we're already at the end of our discussion. The good news is you're all coming to Frankfurt. So I would suggest to the viewers to just approach you at Frankfurt Book Fair and continue the conversation. You can, of course, experience the Philippines at the Frankfurt Book Fair at various locations. There is the Hall 5-1, where you can find the Philippines stand at A95. I'm sure that Daniel, Mariano, and the team will also post that. There is a special comics section in 6.1, and of course the Guest of Honor Pavilion with a beautiful exhibition and a program, I think an hourly program. So there's a lot to explore. And of course, you can also meet our 5 authors from today's session. I would like to take the opportunity to thank you very much for participating. Big thanks to the 5 authors, big thanks to the audience, the questions, and of course, big thanks to National Book Development Board and the Frankfurt Book Fair for organizing this event. And yeah, very much looking forward to seeing you all in Frankfurt. Take care and goodbye.
Okay, thank you, Julian, for this really wonderful conversation and very interesting conversation. We had a lot of questions, and I thought these conversations were really inspiring. You authors are very inspiring. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences, your thoughts, and your insights with us. I'm also looking forward to seeing you soon at the Frankfurt Book Fair. I just want to mention that there's one more stage where you can meet Filipino authors, and that's the Asia stage, which is also in close vicinity of the Philippine National Stand. Okay, so then see you in Frankfurt. You all have a wonderful time, have a great evening, and a great journey to the Frankfurt Book Fair in October. Thank you.
Danke. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.